Welcome to another An Old Man Watches, and today we're going to talk about a 1934 film, so that's nearly 90 years old, The Lost Jungle, starring Clyde Beatty, who you've probably never heard of, and we'll be talking about why that is momentarily, but to give you a bit of a brief overview of the film and its plot. Basically, what we've got here is an animal tamer, somebody who works particularly with lions and tigers and other large cats, who is so obsessed with his work that his fiancée eventually tires of always coming second to the animals and leaves with her father on an extended biological expedition. And the purpose of this expedition is to find a legendary island that served as the origin point for all of the animals in Africa and Asia, which is complete nonsense. I mean, it is award-winningly bad science from a biological and evolutionary point of perspective. All of the animals in Africa and Asia come from, I guess, ultimately the same origin point. But you don't need a single island from which all the islands originated, because Asia and Europe and Africa are all connected physically, and animals can spread across them. But yeah, it's an excuse to have lions and tigers running around in the same place, basically. In any case, the expedition succeeds in its goal of finding the island by being shipwrecked on it. And news of his fiancée's disappearance finally makes the animal tamer look up from his work, and he finagles his way onto a dirigible that's being sent out to rescue the lost expedition. And wouldn't you know it, another storm blows up and the airship crashes. I bet you can't guess where. Actually, I bet you can. So that's basically the premise, or the setup. So we've got a bunch of people on a jungle island somewhere, and they have to survive, and there'll be lots of big animals for them to deal with. So that's the movie in a nutshell. But what's worth talking about with this film? I guess first of all, is it any good? Not really. Let's start with that. It's reasonably brief, I guess. It's about 68 minutes, I think, the feature film version. It's better than a lot of this kind of 1934 stuff, to be fair. But whether it's good or not is not really what I wanted to... Well, not really directly what I wanted to talk about, though certainly it has a factor in, and I'll talk about sort of some of the why and what's interesting about the production. So let's kick off with, first of all, celebrity. Or celebrity? So Clyde Beatty was the world's greatest animal trainer in 1934. Something of a celebrity. And obviously, attempts to turn non-acting celebrities into box office dollars have been happening pretty much since Hollywood began, and they continue to happen today. What's interesting, I guess, about this is obviously the idea that an animal trainer was a sufficiently prestigious and notable name that they thought his name could sell tickets. Like what you see more often nowadays is, you'll see Rihanna or Lady Gaga or something like that. They'll be in a movie, and yeah, sure, but they're already big stars, and they're hoping that will drive fans to go and see the movie, or they're people who are trying to establish a career somewhere else and using acting to do it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's very unlikely that anybody listening to this video could name an animal trainer, let alone who is the world's most famous, unless they actually work in circuses themselves. In the 1930s, being an animal trainer was apparently a reasonably big deal. Like this is a guy. It was worth putting his name on the credits, in a big type, to sell this movie. And this is the second of his celluloid adventures. He had about 6 or 7 all up. Over a period of many years, a few in the 30s and then a few more in the 50s, and the raison d'etre of this show is to have Clyde Beatty, who plays a character called Clyde Beatty, work with big cats. He spends an inordinate amount of the film's runtime with whip and chair in hand, doing his animal training thing. So the second thing I want to talk about is that you may have noticed from the poster that I've managed to get a hold of to include in here that it says Chapter 5, Guerrilla Warfare. What a pun. So as you may guess from that, this was not just a feature film, it was also a serial to be aired before a movie at the cinema. It had 12 parts, which is a pretty regular kind of length for serials of the time, and it was also quite common to turn these serials into movies. Usually the way this was done was to make a movie out of 3 or 4 episodes, usually sort of like episodes 1, 2, 11 and 12, some combination of those would be put together into a movie, and episodes 3 till 10 were basically busy work that didn't really matter in the overall scheme of the plot and could be chopped out so you can make a movie. That wasn't done here, which is is interesting. An unusual thing, I guess, about this feature film is that as they were filming the serial, they also filmed the film version at the same time, simultaneously, refilming several principal scenes with different dialogue and adding several other scenes that are not in the serial, including a different ending, so that they're actually, watching The Lost Jungle, the serial, and watching The Lost Jungle, the movie, are different experiences. I don't know if there was, there was obviously, they perceived a potential value from that. They are 2 different products, and maybe they thought they'd generate more income than that, and in terms of production, it wasn't a big overhead to do it that way. It wasn't a common practice, so I'm guessing that it either wasn't all that successful or the return wasn't seen as sufficient. But I thought that was interesting, that there are, you can watch the serial and you can watch the movie, and you can get different experiences out of them, even though they were both filmed at the same time with the same actors, using the same crew, and that was not a usual kind of thing to be done at the time. The third thing, and last thing that I want to talk about, and I've called it Lions and Tigers Oh My, is that even in the 1930s, I find it hard to imagine that watching somebody on the screen, doing an animal training shtick was particularly interesting. Like, I think whatever excitement comes from an animal training sequence, a guy with a whip and a chair and some big animals, stems from the fact that it is live spectacle and there's a sense of potential danger. That risk is entirely absent in a filmed experience, it feels a bit sad, actually, watching some of these scenes, a little bit squalid watching some of these scenes. And I feel like, particularly in the 1930s, probably the animals in circuses were not well treated at the time, and it probably was quite squalid. But yeah, I would think, it seems to me it's not a thing that translates well. Like, I can understand having a pop star in a movie and having them sing, like Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born. Like, that's a thing that makes sense. Gaga putting on a performance is going to be compelling. And I guess you may hate Lady Gaga and disagree with me there, but film and music have a considerable amount of overlap today. What with videos and the like, the use of visual spectacle and visual storytelling has been a big part of Gaga's career, and I can see how you make that connection of, hey, let's put Lady Gaga in a movie. I don't feel like this is a lion taming, animal training is a thing that translates particularly well to the screen. And I guess the fact that he only made sort of 3 or 4 films in the 30s may also indicate that it didn't really work as well as anticipated. But yeah, to me, it's not something that translates well to the screen, and I'm surprised that somebody thought that it would. So that's The Lost Jungle, an interesting kind of relic of an earlier era, I guess, and like I said, it is nearly 90 years ago. Next time, I'm going to talk about another 1930s film, but one that's probably slightly better known, little thing by the name of The Wizard of Oz. We'll be talking about what's interesting about this movie, and it's certainly an unusual movie. So I hope you'll check that out. In the meantime, thanks for watching this one, and catch you in the next one.